Welcome. I'm really glad you're here. Take a deep breath for a moment. Because this video is not just another piece of content to scroll past. It's a conversation, human to human, about something that quietly affects all of us. Before this video begins, I want you to do something rare. Put aside the noise for a moment, the notifications, the opinions, the endless rush of modern life, and just listen. Not only with your ears, but with your mind, with your awareness, with the part of you that still wants to understand life more deeply. Because this video is not here to attack you. It is not here to tell you what to believe. It is not here to fill your head with more noise. It is here to remind you of something the modern world slowly made you forget. Your mind matters. Your ability to think clearly matters. Your ability to question matters. Your ability to pause and reflect and truly understand matters. In a world where everyone is trying to control your attention, thinking for yourself has become a rare form of freedom. And maybe that freedom is exactly what your soul has been searching for. So don't watch this video passively. Experience it consciously. Question it. Reflect on it. Feel it, because the next few minutes might not just change the way you see the world. They might change the way you see yourself. So before we begin, let's slow down together and talk about the one thing the modern world is making us lose. A message to the human mind. Let's pause for a moment. You, me, everyone listening. Let's just stop the world for a few seconds and breathe. Because in this fast, noisy, confusing age, we rarely do that anymore. We wake up into a storm of opinions, notifications, questions, expectations, before we even open our eyes fully. And somehow, in this world overflowing with voices, we've forgotten the most important one, our own. We don't need another tragedy story. We don't need guilt. We don't need fear. What we need is clarity. What we need is direction. What we need is a reminder of something we once knew but slowly lost along the way. You were born with a brilliant mind, a mind capable of understanding, questioning, exploring, creating, and choosing. Not a mind designed to follow the noise. Not a mind meant to be distracted into silence. Not a mind made to live on autopilot. But a mind meant to be awake. And this is the part we often forget. There is nothing wrong with you. You're not weak. You're not behind. You're not losing intelligence. You're just living in a world that constantly pulls you away from yourself. A world that wants you to react quickly instead of thinking deeply. A world that wants you to chase approval instead of discovering your own truth. A world that wants you to be busy instead of being aware. But here's the beautiful thing. Even in this world, your mind is still yours. Your clarity is still reachable. Your inner voice is still waiting for you. Your ability to think, truly think, is not gone. It's simply waiting for you to return, and that return begins now, because this video, this message, is not about blaming humanity or painting the world as dark. It's about reminding you that the path back to yourself is always open. Human beings are extraordinary. When we quiet the noise, our mind becomes sharp. When we reflect, wisdom appears. When we reconnect with our own thoughts, life becomes clearer, stronger, more meaningful. You don't need superpowers. You just need yourself. That's why we're here together. Not to judge the world, not to fear the future, but to understand it so we can rise above it. And rising above it starts with one simple realization. Your mind is the most powerful tool you own, but only if you use it consciously. This isn't a lecture. It's a conversation, a human speaking to humans. A reminder that you are capable of more clarity, more strength, more awareness than you've been led to believe. You are not here to be overwhelmed. You are here to fully wake up. So let's begin this journey, not with fear, but with hope. Not with heaviness, but with strength. Not with confusion, but with direction. Because the truth is simple. Critical thinking is not disappearing because it's impossible. It's disappearing because we forgot how much it matters. But together, we can bring it back. For ourselves. For our lives. For our future. This is your moment to reconnect with the power you've always had. The power to see clearly, to think deeply, to live consciously, and to rise above the noise. Let's walk that path together. Now the journey begins, and maybe the biggest reason we've become disconnected from ourselves is because the modern world never gives the mind a chance to breathe. Every day, we are surrounded by endless noise, endless stimulation, endless distraction, until we slowly forget what clear thinking even feels like. And that brings us to the first truth we need to understand. The age of noise and the algorithmic mind. Human, gentle, wise. Let's be honest with ourselves for a moment. Life today feels loud, too loud. We wake up, and before our mind even has time to stretch, to breathe, to orient itself in the world, thousands of voices rush in, messages, notifications, opinions, ads, arguments, news, trends, warnings. The world now shouts before we can even listen, and slowly, and without noticing, we stopped hearing our own thoughts. But here's the truth many people don't realize. You are not built for this level of noise. Your mind was not designed to live in a never-ending storm of information. Your brain is brilliant, but it is also human. It needs silence to think. It needs space to understand. It needs stillness to grow. Yet the modern world gives us the opposite. Constant stimulation, constant urgency, constant noise. But this noise is not accidental. It's engineered, designed. Every app, every platform, every feed is built around one mission: to keep your mind occupied, not awakened. They want your attention, not your clarity. Because a focused mind is powerful, but a distracted mind is profitable. And this is where the algorithm enters your life, quietly, invisibly, shaping more of your thoughts than you realize. You open your phone, thinking you are in control, but the truth is, your phone already knows what you will click before you do. It knows what scares you. It knows what excites you. It knows what angers you. It knows what keeps you watching, and slowly, gently, without any warning, it begins to feed you a version of reality that keeps you hooked. Not a version that helps you grow, not a version that challenges you, not a version that makes you stronger, just a version that keeps you scrolling. But here is where we must pause. Because this isn't a message of fear, it's a message of awareness. The algorithm isn't evil. It's simply doing what it was designed to do. But you were designed for something far greater. You were designed to choose, to think, to reflect, to direct your own mind. And the beautiful thing is this: the moment you become aware of the noise, you begin to rise above it. Awareness is the first step toward clarity. Clarity is the first step toward strength. Strength is the first step toward freedom. Let's look deeper, not in a technical way, but in a human way. Imagine your mind as a garden. Every day, thousands of seeds fall into it. Ideas, beliefs, fears, emotions, suggestions, influences. Most people let everything grow. They don't choose. They don't filter. They don't question. So weeds grow where flowers should be. Chaos grows where clarity should live. But a conscious thinker, a person who is awake, does not let the world plant anything in their mind without permission. They choose their seeds. They water their thoughts. They pull out the weeds of misinformation, anxiety, and influence. And slowly, day by day, they rebuild their inner world. This is what it means to think clearly in the age of noise. But let's bring it closer to reality. Because everyone listening to this has experienced it. You finish scrolling for 20 minutes and feel nothing. No growth, no insight, no purpose. Just emptiness. Why? Because your mind wasn't nourished. It was distracted. You were entertained, but not enriched. Your emotions were triggered, but your understanding was untouched. This is the cost of modern noise. But here's the empowering part. You can change this. Completely. Fully. Starting now. You do not need to abandon technology. You do not need to become a monk in the mountains. You do not need to escape society. You only need one thing: to become conscious of your attention. Because your attention is the oxygen of the algorithm. But your attention is also the fuel of your intelligence. When you focus intentionally, your mind sharpens. Your thoughts deepen. Your awareness strengthens. Your clarity returns. When you choose what you consume, instead of letting it choose you, you take back your life from the noise. And the moment you do that, you realize something powerful. You were never overwhelmed. You were simply overstimulated. You were never incapable. You were simply unfocused. You were never weak. You were simply distracted, but a focused human being can cut through any noise. A conscious mind cannot be manipulated. A clear thinker is stronger than any algorithm. So the real question is not, why is the world so loud? The real question is, am I ready to listen to myself again? Because beneath all the noise, beneath all the pressure, beneath all the distraction, your inner voice is still alive, still strong, Still yours. The world may be full of noise, but your mind is still capable of silence. The world may be full of distraction, but your soul is still capable of focus. The world may be full of influence, but your heart is still capable of truth. You have not lost your ability to think. You've only forgotten how powerful it feels. This part of the journey is about remembering that power, reclaiming that clarity, reconnecting with the mind you were born with, the mind that was always meant to be free. This is the beginning of your return to yourself. But noise alone is not the real problem. The deeper problem is what happens after years of living inside that noise. When distraction becomes normal, people slowly stop reflecting. They stop questioning. They stop exploring their own thoughts. And over time, something even more important begins to fade. Our ability to think independently, because a distracted mind is easier to influence. And a mind that never learns how to think deeply eventually learns how to simply follow. And that leads us to something we rarely question enough. The collapse of thought and the education of obedience. Think back to when you were a child, before society told you who you should be, before you learned what was right, wrong, useful, practical, or acceptable. Think about that version of you, curious, fearless, endlessly questioning, endlessly wondering, endlessly exploring. Children don't ask small questions. They ask the questions adults are too tired or too afraid to ask. Why is the sky blue? What is time? Who made the world? Why do people lie? What happens when we die? What does it mean to be a good person? A child's mind is a universe, expansive, unfiltered, pure, alive. But slowly, something happened. Not because you were wrong, but because the world didn't know how to handle a free mind. You entered the education system, and the shift began. You weren't encouraged to explore questions. You were trained to remember answers. You weren't taught how to think. You were taught what to think. You weren't guided to understand ideas. You were guided to repeat them, and somewhere in that process, your natural curiosity, the part of you that wanted to understand life deeply, was replaced with something else: obedience. Let's be honest about our education systems. They produce many things: professionals, workers, employees, followers, but rarely thinkers. You were praised when you followed instructions and corrected when you questioned the system. You were rewarded for memorizing information, but ignored when you asked deeper questions. The message was subtle, but powerful. Don't think too deeply. Just stay in line. Not because teachers are bad, most are doing their best, but because the system itself was never designed to awaken minds. It was designed to manage them, so we grew up learning how to answer but not how to understand, how to perform but not how to reflect, how to conform but not how to question, and without realizing it, we became adults who fear their own thoughts, adults who doubt their own intuition, adults who repeat ideas they never examined, adults who follow crowds because they never learned how to stand alone. But here is the truth the world rarely tells you. There was never anything wrong with your mind. It was simply never given the space to grow in the direction it naturally wanted. You weren't bad at critical thinking. You were untrained in it. You weren't unintelligent. You were uninspired. You weren't weak. You were conditioned to believe others knew better than you. But deep inside you, that original mind, the one with curiosity, depth, imagination, insight, and is still alive. You see, real thinking is not about being clever. It's about being conscious. It's about being honest with yourself. It's about having the courage to ask, does this make sense? Is this actually true? What do I believe, not what I was told to believe? Who am I when I'm not performing for anyone? These questions are the beginning of awakening. But the collapse of thought today is not just about education. It's also about fear. Most people don't think deeply because they are afraid of what they might discover. They fear disappointing others. They fear standing apart. They fear being wrong. They fear being alone. They fear the discomfort that comes with clarity. But here is the beautiful truth. Thinking does not isolate you. It liberates you. Because when you begin to think deeply, you'll notice something remarkable. Life starts making sense. Your choices become clearer. Your purpose becomes louder. Your confidence becomes stronger. Your direction becomes real. Critical thought is not an attack on society. It is a gift to your own life. It is the tool that allows you to build a life based on understanding, not pressure. Based on clarity, not confusion. Based on truth, not imitation. And maybe the most empowering truth is this: you do not need the system's permission to think freely. You do not need approval from others. You do not need validation from the crowd. You just need one thing: a willingness to return to your own mind, because everything great in your life, your growth, your purpose, your confidence, your peace, begins with the courage to think for yourself. So let this be your reminder. You are not a product of conditioning. You are a mind capable of awakening. You are not designed for obedience. You are designed for awareness. You are not here to repeat the world. You are here to understand it. And when you begin to think consciously again, you reclaim the most powerful part of being human, the ability to choose your own path with clarity, purpose, and courage. This is the moment you step out of the system and step into yourself. This is where real thinking begins, but the story doesn't end with education. Because even after people leave the classroom, something powerful continues shaping the way they think. The deep human desire to belong, to be accepted, to fit in, to avoid rejection. And sometimes, without even realizing it, people silence their own thoughts just to feel safe inside the crowd, not because they are weak, but because they are human. And this is where the real psychological battle begins, the moment a person must choose between comfort and consciousness. The psychology of collective stupidity. Let's talk about something difficult, not with judgment, but with compassion. Why intelligent people often stop thinking for themselves. It's easy to blame society, technology, algorithms, schools, or politics. But the deeper truth is much more human. We don't lose critical thinking because we're incapable. We lose it because we're afraid. Afraid of being wrong. Afraid of standing out. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of being judged. Afraid of questioning what everyone else accepts. And this fear, this deep emotional fear, is where collective stupidity begins. Not stupidity as an insult, but stupidity as the closing of the mind, the shrinking of awareness, the surrender of independent thought. Human beings are social creatures. We are wired to belong, to be accepted, to feel part of something. Belonging is beautiful. It gives us warmth, community, connection. But here is the danger. When belonging becomes more important than truth, the mind becomes silent. When fitting in becomes more important than understanding, thinking becomes optional. And slowly, quietly, we trade our clarity for comfort. We agree to things we don't believe. We repeat things we never examined. We support ideas we don't understand. We follow paths we never chose, not because we're weak, but because we're human. But let's go deeper, because this is not a story of blame. It is a story of awakening. The human brain loves shortcuts. It wants life to be simple, predictable, automatic. So instead of slow, careful thought, it takes the easy path. If everyone believes it, it must be true. If everyone is doing it, I should too. If the group agrees, who am I to question? This instinct helped our ancestors survive, but in the modern world, it traps us. It keeps us quiet when we should speak. It keeps us confused when we should reflect. It keeps us comfortable when we should grow. It keeps us safe, but small. And this group comfort creates a powerful illusion. If everyone around me thinks this way, then I don't need to think at all. This is how collective stupidity grows, not through ignorance, but through emotional survival. But here's the truth the world forgets. Just because a million people believe a false idea does not make it true. Just because everyone moves in the same direction does not mean it's the right direction. Just because something is popular does not mean it is wise, and this is where your power begins. Because thinking for yourself doesn't require genius. It requires courage, the courage to pause, the courage to question, the courage to breathe before reacting, the courage to say, let me understand this for myself, the courage to walk alone for a little while until clarity finds you. You don't need to fight the world. You only need to refuse to abandon yourself. That one decision separates the awakened mind from the collective mind. But there is something even deeper, and this is the heart of it. Most people don't think clearly because they are thinking in fear. Fear of being disliked. Fear of being judged. Fear of being excluded. Fear of being different. Fear of being isolated from the tribe. But here's the uplifting truth. You don't need the tribe to validate your intelligence. You don't need the crowd to confirm your clarity. You don't need the majority to approve your individuality. Your mind is enough. Your intuition is enough. Your awareness is enough. Your truth is enough. Collective stupidity fades the moment one person chooses to think consciously. Because consciousness spreads. Awareness spreads. Clarity spreads. Courage spreads. Every person who awakens lights a path for others. Every person who questions gives permission to those who are afraid to question. Every person who stands in truth reminds others that truth is possible. And maybe that's why you're listening to this now, because some part of you is ready to break out of the mental cage the world placed around you without your consent. Some part of you is ready to reclaim your mind and return to the person you were meant to be. Clear, conscious, confident, awake. So, let me tell you something simple, but powerful. You do not owe the world your conformity. You owe yourself your clarity. Thinking for yourself is not arrogance. It's responsibility. It's self-respect. It's maturity. It's strength. And when you begin to think consciously again, you break free from the psychological traps that keep most of the world asleep. This is not the rise of collective stupidity. This is the beginning of your individual awakening. And awakening always begins with one decision. I will no longer think with fear. I will think with awareness. But once a person begins to step away from fear, once they stop living only for approval, something beautiful starts to happen. They begin to hear themselves again. Not the voice of the crowd. Not the pressure of society, but their own deeper awareness. The quiet inner voice that was always there beneath the noise. And that's when thinking becomes more than intelligence. It becomes something personal, something meaningful, something deeply human. Because true thinking is not just a mental process. It's a way of reconnecting with yourself. And maybe that is where real freedom truly begins. The spiritual active of thinking. There is something sacred about the human mind. Not because it is smart, but because it is free, and somewhere inside you, beneath all the noise, beneath all the pressure, beneath all the borrowed beliefs, there is a mind that is still alive, still clear, still yours. We often think of critical thinking as a school subject. Logic, analysis, arguments, facts. But thinking goes far beyond that. Thinking, real thinking, is a spiritual act. It is the act of returning to your own consciousness. The act of meeting yourself without filters, without noise, without fear. The act of listening to your own truth when the world tries to bury it under 1,000 voices. You see, there are two ways to live. You can live on the surface, reacting, imitating, rushing, surviving. Or you can live from within, reflecting, choosing, understanding, awakening. The first path is automatic. Anyone can walk it. Most people do. The second path is conscious. Very few choose it. But those who do live a different kind of life, a life with depth, meaning, direction, and inner strength, and that journey begins the moment you choose to think intentionally. Because you cannot awaken your life until you awaken your mind. Let's look deeper. Thinking is not about proving others wrong. It's not about winning debates. It's not about being smarter. Thinking is about understanding yourself, understanding your choices, understanding your experiences, understanding your emotions, understanding your purpose. When you think consciously, you begin to see patterns in your life that were invisible before. You begin to recognize why you react the way you do. You begin to understand why certain situations drain you and others inspire you. You begin to see the difference between who you actually are and who you learned to be, and this is where the spiritual part begins, because thinking is the bridge between your mind and your soul. When the mind becomes clearer, the soul becomes louder. When the mind becomes still, the soul begins to speak. When the mind becomes honest, the soul becomes free. There's a moment that comes to every awakened person, a moment when you sit alone, in silence, and you suddenly feel something familiar, something you haven't felt in years, yourself, not the version shaped by society, not the version performing for others, not the version seeking approval, but the version of you that is real, the version of you that knows, the version of you that was there long before the noise arrived. And when you connect with that self, thinking becomes more than logic. It becomes clarity. It becomes healing. It becomes strength. It becomes peace. Thinking becomes the act of returning home. Many people fear thinking deeply because they believe it will make their life heavier. But the truth is the opposite. Deep thinking doesn't create heaviness. It dissolves it. It frees you from confusion. It frees you from emotional storms. It frees you from other people's expectations. It frees you from the illusions you inherited. It frees you from the habits that no longer belong to you. Thinking is not a burden. Unthinking is. Living without self-awareness is what makes life overwhelming. Living without inner clarity is what creates unnecessary pain. Living without reflection is what traps people in cycles they don't understand. But the moment you begin to think consciously, the fog begins to lift. The patterns begin to make sense. The heaviness begins to lighten. The path begins to appear. Thinking does not take you away from life. It brings you back to it. And here is the most beautiful part. When you awaken your mind, you awaken your power. Because clarity creates confidence. Understanding creates direction. Awareness creates freedom, and a free mind creates a free life. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to solve everything. You don't have to be perfect. You only have to be aware. Awareness is enough. Awareness is the beginning of healing, growth, change, purpose. Awareness is how you transform your life from the inside out. You are not here to be confused. You are not here to be led blindly. You are not here to follow the noise. You are here to awaken, to understand, to grow, to rise. Your thoughts are not just ideas. They are the architecture of your destiny. And when you think with clarity, with honesty, with presence, with courage, your life begins to align with who you truly are. So let me say this clearly. Thinking isn't just a skill. It's a form of self-love. It's a form of self-respect. It's a form of spiritual responsibility. Because no one else lives inside your mind. No one else walks inside your soul. No one else shapes your inner world. Only you. And when you choose to think deeply, you are choosing to honor the gift of being human. You are choosing to live awake in a world that sleeps. You are choosing to see clearly in a world that is blurry. You are choosing to walk your own path in a world that follows. You are choosing to reclaim yourself. This is the power of real thinking. It reconnects you with the person you were always meant to be, and maybe that is the most powerful realization of all. The moment you begin to think consciously, you don't just change your thoughts, you begin to change your life. Because awareness changes the way you see the world. Clarity changes the way you make decisions. And understanding changes the way you walk through life itself. One conscious thought leads to another. One moment of awareness creates another. And slowly, quietly, a new version of you begins to emerge. Stronger, calmer, clearer, more awake. This is how real transformation happens. Not all at once, but one conscious choice at a time. And when enough people begin making those choices, something extraordinary begins to happen. The quiet revolution. We've walked through a lot together. The noise of the world, the conditioning of the mind, the fear of the crowd, the rediscovery of your inner voice. Now you might be wondering, what do I do with all this understanding? How does this actually change my life? The answer is simple, and powerful, and incredibly human. You start a quiet revolution inside yourself. Not a loud revolution, not an angry revolution, not a dramatic revolution, a quiet one. The kind that changes everything without shouting anything. Because real change, the kind that transforms your life from the inside out, doesn't begin with noise. It begins with awareness. It begins with choosing clarity over confusion, presence over autopilot, purpose over pressure, truth over trends, self-respect over self-doubt. It begins the moment you decide to think for yourself. See, most people think revolutions come from force. But the greatest revolutions in history began with thought. A single thought that refused to die. One person decides to question. One person decides to observe. One person decides to reflect. One person decides to act with awareness instead of impulse. And that one person changes everything. You might not believe it yet, but you can be that person in your own life. You don't need followers. You don't need approval. You don't need permission. You need a decision to stop letting the world think for you. A decision to stop living by habits that no longer serve you. A decision to stop silencing yourself to keep others comfortable. A decision to rise to your own potential. The quiet revolution begins when you say, "From this moment forward, I choose awareness." Awareness of what you consume. Awareness of what you believe. Awareness of how you react. Awareness of how you choose your path. Awareness of the thoughts you allow into the space of your mind. Because awareness is more powerful than any algorithm, any trend, any pressure, any expectation. Awareness is a shield. Awareness is a compass. Awareness is a light. And once your mind becomes aware, no force on earth can make you unconscious again. Here's something the world rarely tells you. You don't need a perfect mind to think clearly. You don't need a perfect life to grow spiritually. You don't need complete certainty to move forward. You just need one thing: the courage to return to yourself. The courage to be honest with your own thoughts. The courage to feel your own truth. The courage to pause in a world that keeps running. The courage to look inward when everyone else looks outward. This courage is not loud. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't get applause. But it transforms lives, and when you awaken, people around you will feel it. Not because you tell them, but because your presence changes. You begin to speak with clarity. You begin to walk with purpose. You begin to choose with confidence. You begin to see through illusions that once controlled you. Thinking becomes not just a skill, but a way of living. A powerful, peaceful, conscious way of meeting the world. So here's your invitation, right now, in this moment. Start your quiet revolution. Start by being more aware today than you were yesterday. Start by questioning something you always assumed was true. Start by taking back a piece of your attention. Start by carving out one moment of silence in a world addicted to noise. Start small, because small, consistent clarity builds an unstoppable mind. And remember this: you don't need to convince the world. You don't need to change the world. You only need to change how you show up in it. When you think clearly, your life becomes clear. When your life becomes clear, your future becomes intentional. And when your future becomes intentional, you become unstoppable. Narrator, quiet, powerful. Your mind is not just a tool. It is your freedom, your clarity, your compass, your strength, your voice, your home. Choose to awaken it. Choose to trust it. Choose to honor it. Choose to follow it. Because the world may be full of noise, but your truth is louder when you finally learn how to listen. This is your moment. Your spark. Your beginning. The quiet revolution starts with you. Think for yourself. Feel for yourself. Live for yourself. Awaken, not for the world, but for your own life. And maybe that's what this journey was really about from the beginning. Not becoming smarter than everyone else. Not winning arguments. Not proving anything to the world, but simply waking up. Waking up to your own mind, your own awareness, your own life. Because once a person begins to think clearly, they begin to live differently. They move differently. They choose differently. They see themselves and the world with new eyes, and that awakening quietly changes everything. Awakening in the end. The world does not change when the noise becomes louder. It changes when one human being begins to see clearly. Let that human be you. Let your thoughts be your own. Let your choices become conscious. Let your awareness come alive again. Because the greatest journey you will ever take is not across countries, careers, or achievements, but within yourself. A journey from confusion to clarity, from reaction to reflection, from distraction to understanding, from living unconsciously to finally awakening. And maybe that awakening doesn't happen in one dramatic moment. Maybe it happens quietly. The first time you pause and truly think for yourself. The first time you choose clarity over comfort. The first time you stop following the noise and start listening to your own mind again. Remember this: one awakened mind can inspire thousands of distracted ones. One conscious human being can bring light into rooms full of confusion, and one clear thought can change the direction of an entire life. So walk forward from this moment with quiet confidence, with a mind that sees clearly, with a heart that stays human, and with a soul that refuses to sleep through life. Your awakening has already begun. Now, go live it. The quiet revolution starts within. If this message spoke to something inside you, hold on to that feeling. And if even one part of this video helped you pause, reflect, or see life a little more clearly, then share it with someone who might need it too, because maybe the world doesn't need more noise right now. Maybe it simply needs more conscious human beings. Thank you for being here, and thank you for thinking deeply with me today. Until next time, stay aware, stay human, and keep awakening.